Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to the Ministry of Education and Partners COVID-19 Teaching by Radio program. The Ministry of Education and Partners COVID-19 Teaching by Radio program is a 30-minute radio intervention support program that is meant to provide continuous instruction to keep you academically engaged during this stay-at-home period, as well as preparing you, our 6th, 9th, and 12th graders for the pending Liberian Primary School Certificate Exam, Liberia Junior High School Certificate Exam, and West Africa Senior Secondary Certificate Exam when the time comes. Also, in addition to this academic support, the program is meant to provide psychosocial support for learners, teachers, and parents, and also tips on how you as parents and teachers can provide support to your students and children at home. Now, let's join our teacher for today's lesson.
Hello, students, learners, and parents of Liberia. Our today's study is in social studies, and the topic for today is the structure and function of the Liberian government. Your presenter here for this lecture is J. Emmanuel Milton. Upon completion of this topic, we would like for our students to know or learners to know what a government is, the three branches of the Liberian government, the function and duties of each branch. In this discussion, we will address government in terms of what it is and what it does. We will also focus on the function and branches of the Liberian government. First, the nature and purpose of government. What is government and why is government necessary? Government in any country is organized to protect life and property and render services to its citizens. It also makes laws, enforces the laws, establishes orders, and executes development for its citizens. Let me repeat. Government in any country is organized to protect life and property and to render services to its citizens. It also makes laws, enforces the laws, and establishes orders and executes development for its citizens. Why do we have a government? Government is there to administer, to control, to direct, to manage the affairs of the state or a country. The government belongs to the state or country. Every citizen must respect and obey the government. Government can help in many ways. The government of Liberia has the power and duty provided by the Constitution, prime among which are: 1. To provide public services. 2. To settle conflicts and keep orders. And 3. To provide security and common defense against threats from other countries. Usually, people who live and work together may have a conflict from time to time. A conflict is a disagreement between people. Governments have the right, duty, and power to keep order by settling conflicts according to law. Good citizens will always try to avoid conflict or find means to resolve conflict. Conflict may be bad or troublesome if not managed properly. There is no good conflict because conflict can spoil or break relationships or set people apart. Therefore, citizens should be careful in how they get involved. Let me repeat this. There is no good conflict. Conflict can be bad and it can be troublesome. Conflict can spoil or break relationships or set people apart. Therefore, citizens should be careful in how they get involved. On the other hand, patriotic or loyal citizens do not damage properties during conflict, whether those properties are for government or owned by private individuals. The government is also necessary because it renders important services to its citizens. For example, our government can build schools, our government builds hospitals, our government provides electricity, good roads, feeder roads, paved roads, water, etc. All citizens have certain rights that must be protected. The right of life and property. Now, in Liberia, our form of government is called democracy or republic. Most time you hear people say Republic of Liberia or in our democracy. This is why our country is called the Republic of Liberia. In this form of government, leader or head of the government is the president. In the Republican form of government, the leader or the head of the government is the president. The president is elected by the people or citizens of the country. However, under the Republican form of government, all citizens are equal before the law. They have rights under the law to run for public offices. If there is an election, it must be free and fair. There are other forms of government that we shall discuss in subsequent lessons. The government of Liberia has 3 branches, namely the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch of the government. Let me repeat. The government of Liberia has 3 branches, namely the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch of the government. Each branch of the government has certain responsibilities or duties. Let us look at each of them one by one. Please listen carefully as we go through them slowly for your understanding. First, the executive branch of government. We have the president or head of the government, and the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Liberia. The vice president and cabinet, the cabinet are the ministers in the government. They manage the affairs of the government. They set policies and interact or deal with the outside world. The executive branch also includes a vice president who will become president or chief executive on the death, incapacity, removal, or resignation of the president. So you see, in the executive branch of government, there is a president and there is also a vice president and cabinet ministers. The vice president can take over if the president is not able to, if the president died, or the president was removed from office for some reasons, or the president resigned. Then the vice president can take over. The Constitution gives powers to the president to appoint officials of the government, command the armed forces, and deal with leaders of other countries in the world. The Constitution of Liberia gives power to the president to appoint officials of the government, to command the armed forces, and deal with leaders of other countries. Note this carefully. Remember, we are still studying the executive branch of the government. All the ministries, public corporations, embassies, and agencies fall under the executive branch of government. Let us list the ministries under the executive branch of the government. 1, we have the Ministry of National Defense. 2, we have the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. 3, we have the Ministry of Education. 4, we have the Ministry of Health. 5, we have the Ministry of Agriculture. 6, we have the Ministry of Public Works. 7, the Ministry of Lands, Mines, and Energy. 8, the Ministry of Posts and Telecommunication. 9, the Ministries of Justice. 10, the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry. 11, the Ministry of Gender, Social Welfare and Child Protection. 12, the Ministry of Labor. 13, the Ministry of Internal Affairs. 14, the Ministry of Information, Cultural Affairs and Tourism. 15, the Ministry of Youth and Sports. 16, the Ministry of Transport. 17, the Ministry of State for Presidential Affairs. And 18, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I want to repeat the names of these ministries so that you can get them correctly. We started with the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Public Works, the Ministry of Lands, Mines and Energy, the Ministry of Posts and Telecommunication, the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry, the Ministry of Gender, Social Welfare and Child Protection, the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Ministry of Information, Cultural Affairs and Tourism, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, the Ministry of Transport, the Ministry for Presidential Affairs, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Let us look now at the legislative branch of the government. The legislative branch of the government most often is referred to as the legislature. The legislature refers to the House of Senate and the House of Representatives. That branch of government is divided into two. We have the House of Senate, which is called the upper house, and the House of Representatives, which is called the lower house. They are there to make laws. The legislative branch has many powers, but these are three that are most important. 1, to represent the people of Liberia. 2, to make laws for the people or the country. And 3, to oversee or check the executive arm of the government. This branch of the government can do many good things. We will learn few of these. The House can impeach the President and other high officials. The House can impeach the President and other high officials. The Senate approves presidential appointments. Most often you hear the President nominate this person and it is subject to the approval or the sanction of the Senate. So we call that one confirmation hearing. The President appoints somebody, the person has to go to the Senate to be confirmed. When the Senate confirms you, then they write the President and the President gives you your letter of appointment. The Senate also approves treaties. The legislature can control the President's program by their advice and consent. That is, if the President wants to do something, he goes to the legislature for approval and they advise him appropriately. They can make and oversee the national budget. The national budget is money that government spends in running the affairs of the state. So the Senate or the legislature can also oversee the national budget. The judicial branch. Most often you hear the word judiciary, it means the court system. The court system, they have judges that can judge or rule on cases by determining or interpreting the laws. So the judicial branch can interpret the law. Let me just say that when the law is made by the legislature, that law is interpreted by the judiciary and it is enforced by the executive. That's how these three branches work for our government. Once appointed, judges are free from presidential control. That is, when the president appoints someone to become a judge, a circuit judge, a magistrate, or whatever, that person is no longer being controlled by the president. But the president can control his direct cabinet, that is, the people who are heads of the various ministries or public corporations. They can also declare presidential actions unconstitutional or decide on the meaning of laws. So the president can take an action and the judiciary can say, well, this aspect of the action that the president has taken is unconstitutional. That is not within the big law book of the country. They can rule that laws are unconstitutional. So the judges can also rule that this aspect of the law is unconstitutional because they know what the law says. The court system, you have the Supreme Court, you have the Circuit Court, you have the Debt Court, you have the Traffic Court, you have the Magisterial Courts. All of these constitute the court system and they fall under the jurisdiction of the Judicial Branch of government. The head of this branch of government is the Chief Justice. Of course, you should know that the Chief Justice have 4 other judges that can help him make decisions. And these judges are called Associate Justices of the Supreme Court. But the head of the Judicial Branch of the government is called the Chief Justice. All powers of the government come from the Constitution. It is the big organic law that guides everything or the running of the government. Please understand, don't forget, there are 3 branches in the government: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judiciary branch. Very good. Now, decision making. In large groups, citizens do not take part directly in day-to-day decision making. Let me repeat this. In large groups, citizens do not take part directly in the day-to-day decision making. Instead, they elect representatives to make decisions that are consistent with the goals of the state. This type of government is often referred to as a representative democracy. That's why we have representatives from various constituencies. In Maserati alone, there are about 17. Other counties have 3, other counties have 4 representatives depending on the population. Our government is considered a representative democracy. Every Liberian citizen must learn how to take part in this democracy. But what is democracy? What is a democracy? Democracy is a form of government by the people, ruled by the majority, and a government in which the power is invested in the people, and they have the right to exercise that power. Let me repeat. A democracy is a form of government by the people, the rule of the majority, a government in which the power is invested in the people and they exercise that power.
Coronavirus is spread via droplets. When the person coughs or sneezes, the droplets land on surfaces and are picked up on the hands of others and spread further. People catch the virus when they touch their infected hands to their mouth, nose, or eyes. It follows that the single most important thing you can do to protect yourself is keep your hands clean by washing them frequently with soap and water or hand sanitizer.
Now, on your own, try to answer these questions. 1. Which branch of government can levy taxes? 2. Who is the head of the legislative branch? 3. List 5 ministries of the government and explain their respective functions. 4. Which court in Liberia is higher than all other courts? And 5. Name the ministry that is responsible for buying and selling in Liberia. Let me repeat. 1. Which branch of government can levy taxes? 2. Who is the head of the legislative branch? 3. List 5 ministries of the government and explain their respective functions. 4. Which court in Liberia is higher than all other courts? And 5, name the ministry that is responsible for buying and selling in Liberia. Thank you very much, students and listeners, and also our parents, for listening to this program and the topic for today, the structure and function of the Liberian government. If you have any question or concerns, please text your question to this number, 0886 573 114. Again, 0886 573 114. Remember, Corona is real. Observe all of the health rules and save yourself